All right, we're looking at the Annabel Temitope case study. Let's scroll down and read question number 1. Based on the information provided in Exhibit 1, the forecast ending book value per share for fiscal year 2014 is closest to. So for the forecasts, for forecasting the ending book value per share, basically what that formula looks like typically is we're going to take the beginning book value per share, and then we're going to, here, let me just pull it in. We're going to add, find a good spot. We're going to add earnings to that and then subtract out dividends. That's going to give us our ending book value. Let's start reading until we get to that information. Annabel Temitope is evaluating the expected residual income as of the end of September 2014 for Asia Pulp and Paper Company, PAP, a vertically integrated pulp and paper producer, using an adjusted beta of 1.2 relative to the S&P 500, a 10-year government bond yield of 1.7%, and an equity risk premium of 3.8%. Temitope uses the capital asset pricing model to estimate PAP's required rate of return. Temitope obtains the following information as of the close of September 2014. So we're at Exhibit 1 here. Looks like we'll have the information we need. So we have current market price, book value per share as of December 31, 2013. So that'll be our beginning book value per share since we're looking at fiscal 2014. And then we've got consensus annual earnings estimate, 3.52 for the year. So we'll be adding that to our book value per share. And then we'll subtract out the dividend. So we've got forecasted dividend of 1.46. So we've got all the numbers we need. Let's pull that in. And we can see when we add those together, add the earnings, subtract out the dividend, gives us 12.02. And we've got that right there. Answer B. All right, so we're looking at question 2 now. Based on the information in Exhibit 1, the forecast residual income for the fiscal year 2015 that Temitope would calculate would be closest to 2.9, 3.1, or 3.2, $3.20. So for residual income, as a reminder, that's going to be our EP or our earnings per share, and then we're going to subtract out basically the cost of those earnings. So the return, our cost of capital, which we will calculate using the CAPM model since we're given all those figures, multiplying that by the book value to kind of get our cost, and then residual income is any income above that. So it's going to be EPS estimate, since we're doing forecast, let me pull in the formula. So we're going to have EPS estimate minus R being our cost of capital times the beginning book value. So we're looking at 2015 residual income. So we have our EPS estimate for 2015, 3.64. Our beginning book value is going to be a little bit tricky since we're only given the 2013 book value. So basically, going back to that last question, we're going to need to figure out the beginning 2014 year book value, or the end of 2014 year book value, which we'll do by adding in the earnings and subtracting out the dividends. So we're going to add earnings of 2014, 3.52 minus 1.46 gives us the beginning book value in 2015 for what we're solving for here. So we got our beginning book value now, we got our EPS. Lastly, we just need to solve for R, which we're going to do using the CAPM formula. We're given the equity risk premium of 3.8, and we're given the risk-free rate as well as the beta. And so we can plug those all right in, get our R of 0.0626. This is going to be their cost of capital. Plugging all those numbers in down here brings us to 2.8875. So this is that residual income number, the income left over after kind of accounting for that cost of capital. And so these are all rounded, so we'll go with answer A, $2.90. Question 3. Which of the following two statements by Temitope and Promise is most likely correct? So we've got strength 2 and weakness 1, strength 1 and weakness 2, or strength 1 and weakness 1. So I can see those right here. It looks like we're going to be looking at these statements and figuring out which two are correct. We last left off at the exhibit though, so let's start reading here just to make sure we don't miss anything. David Emanuel, Temitope's supervisor, has reviewed her computations on PAP's expected residual value income. He has calculated the stock value of PAP and would like Temitope to do the same. They use different approaches but perform the calculation using consistent assumptions. Emanuel's approach, calculate the stock value using the residual income model. Temitope's approach, calculate the stock value using the dividend discount model instead. Cynthia Promise, a coworker of Temitope, specializes in the airline industry. Recently, she's been monitoring Southwest Airlines. She considers a stock fairly valued if her intrinsic value calculation using the single-stage residual income model is within 10% of the current market price. She's gathered the following information for LUV. Current book value per share, $26. Current market price per share, $44. Assumed long-term return on equity is 11% and long-term growth is 5.5%. The cost of equity based on CAPM is 8.5%. Emanuel asked Temitope and Promise to create a list of strengths and weaknesses of residual income models. Okay, so it looks like most of this information up here is not really going to be relevant to the question. We're just looking at strengths and weaknesses of the residual income model. They worked together and submitted the following list to Emanuel. So strength 1, the models focus on economic profitability. That is correct. As we kind of detailed in the last couple questions when we were doing the calculations, they take into account profitability after the cost of capital, which is kind of the definition of economic profitability. So we can give that one a check mark. That is correct. So we see in these answers we've got strength 1 in B and C, so we can likely go ahead and cross off A here. Strength 2, the debt capital cost is appropriately reflected by interest expense. So the debt capital cost is going to be this should be what we could borrow at today. So if the company's credit rating or financials have changed since they last borrowed money, the debt capital cost may be different than what the interest expense was in the past. So the interest expense is going to be kind of reflect what their past cost of capital was for debt, whereas today the market may be different. And it may be because of the individual company, or it may just because rates are higher because of the macro environment. So strength 2 is incorrect. Weakness 1, the models do not work well when cash flows are unpredictable. This is incorrect. The residual income model is actually going to be more helpful when cash flows are unpredictable, whereas the dividend discount model and discounted cash flow model rely more on predictable cash flows. So we can cross that off, and looking here we have strength 1 and weakness 1, so it looks like we can cross off C. So weakness 2 should be correct. Let's make sure. It sounds like it is. Weakness 2, accounting data used as inputs may require significant adjustments. This is correct. The residual income model requires pretty heavily on accounting data, and in its nature, by its nature, we'll a lot of times have to make adjustments to that data in order to kind of make comparisons over time, make comparisons between different companies just because of little accounting differences they may, or approaches they may take. So that is a correct statement. So we can confidently choose B. Strength 1 and weakness 2 are both correct. Question 4. Which of Emanuel's statements about the appropriateness of the residual income model is most accurate? So we left off right here under weakness 2, so we'll start reading. Emanuel reviews the list created by Temitope and Promise and makes the following 2 statements. Statement 1. The residual income model is most appropriate when a company's dividends are not predictable. So this is a correct statement. We detailed this in the last question as well. But the main gist is residual income model is looking at that profit above cost of capital. And so the dividends and cash flows not being predictable are not as big of a deal in this type of model. And then statement 2, the residual income model is least appropriate if the book value is not predictable. This is also going to be a correct statement. The book value is a pretty key input, as we can see in the residual income model, we've got here book value right here. So if the book value is bouncing around a lot, that's going to change the value of the value a lot, which is may not reflect the actual market value. And so we can go with answer C, both statements are correct.